Welcome to HR on the Rocks, a podcast for professionals that takes you behind the closed door. All right. It's time for another episode of HR on the Rocks.
Yeah.
I've got an añejo old fashioned going over here. How about you?
Just a Glenfiddich 15-year.
Nice. How about you, Melanie?
Got a Tyler Island iced tea.
Nice. Okay. Very good. So we decided, obviously, to bring this show to the camera now too. So pretty excited about that aspect of it, and I think we're gonna jump right into the second episode, really just with what brought us into the HR space. So Justin, I'll turn it over to you first, and we'll talk about how we got here.
All right. Well, first off, cheers. Second,
Cheers.
it's a very interesting kind of story how you get here. We've had this discussion, and you kind of don't know if one thing leads you down a certain path and how everything goes. Growing up here in the DFW area, I'm the prototypical kid who had or I guess more stereotypical kid who had the oil and gas.
You're also a prototype, Justin.
I am. Oil and gas background, and that's what father and grandfather and everybody did. And, I witnessed a lot of layoffs, and I witnessed a lot of, what goes on behind that HR closed door. And, like the three of us have discussed, is that something that shaped my career and getting into it? I don't know. Maybe I wanted to be the one on the behind that door giving the bad news, right? But, the more I got into HR, the more I found what brought me into it and made me happy was actually the smile on somebody's face when they got the job, the tears of happiness, or in some cases, they didn't get it and you worked harder to find them something because you knew they were a good candidate. You knew that their story would fit in some organization very well. So I think that is actually what has drawn me and driven me now to succeed more, is the smile on people's faces where, we all know sometimes, there's a few people, and I'm sure we'll get into that in later episodes, right? That you want to bring behind that door and say, well, bye-bye.
Today's your last day.
We'll see you later.
Sure.
That's the truth. That's just the nature of being human and interacting. Sure. But, you never want to actually do that. Well, never mind. I can think of a couple of people. We'll discuss that later. So I really think that is what, probably really brought me into the HR fold. Something that, I never thought I would do. A place that I never thought I would be, but I wouldn't change my experiences, and I wouldn't change going through this and being right here, right now, for anything. It's great.
What was like the initial entry point for you? So obviously it's a weird space to get into for a lot of people, right? Most of us just kind of fall into it. So
in college, no, you're fine. So in college, actually, in high school, I wrote for the newspaper and did layout design for the school newspaper, which translated me going to college and looking for a job because I was being an idiot. And my parents said, you have to find a job because you have to pay for your own beer money and midnight food money. We're done. It is job. It is job time now. So I actually interviewed for a job in the human resources department at the physical plant at Texas Tech, and took in my newspapers and stuff that I had done, layout and design. And that got me into the HR department to actually see the world of, how payrolls run, how people talk in HR, how people, all the behind the scenes, because it was There was 5, 6 of us in there. So it was really seeing how this department ran and getting the behind the scenes of how HR actually worked. And then from that point on, it's almost impossible once you start working in HR to get out of HR.
They pull you
Yeah.
back in.
It just, from that point on, I got into the staffing world and got
Yeah.
into, you know, perm placement and temp placement. And then that shifted from medical to IT and, then on the corporate side. So, which led me to YouTube.
Very cool. Very cool. All
Kind
right.
of crazy. How about you, Melanie? What you got? Bring it to me.
My journey to HR. So someone had told me 15 years ago that I'd be here doing what I'm doing today. I'm not sure I would have believed them. And if someone had told me 5 years ago that I'd be recording
Only 15 years ago?
I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back farther than that, but I'll go back 15 years. I wouldn't have believed them. I've never would have thought HR. Um, and I mean, even 5 years ago, I wouldn't believe if someone said you're going to be recording a podcast. I would not. I definitely wouldn't believe that. And that's probably partly because my initial career plan was a bit muddled. Um, I honestly don't even know if you could call it a career plan. I went from wanting to be a professional musician, professional French horn player, so, very difficult to find a job doing that, to wanting to be a Latin professor, probably even more difficult to find a job doing that, to finally settling on working at a small law firm as a legal assistant. So basically, it was the only place that was willing to take a chance on me. Ultimately, I am grateful. I was grateful. I remain grateful that I found someone that was willing to take a chance on someone that just had customer service skills, um, a positive attitude, an English degree. But fast forward to today, and I'm 10 years deep into an HR career with experience in the science field, technology field, healthcare, field. And I saw my career transition from the legal world into the HR world when I moved to Long Island and worked for a labor law attorney there at a national lab. And that's where I sparked my interest in HR. You'd think at a place with Nobel Prize discoveries and, one of the few collider accelerators in the world, that I would have grown an interest in science. But I went against the grain
HR it
and
is.
I went against the grain and I fell in love with the drama that comes with labor unions. And I may need to have science
Do you know
study
where
my
Hoffa's
brain.
buried?
She
No,
might.
I
She
don't think
Did
might.
you get
so.
that far into HR where they told
We
you where
discussed
Hoffa was
it.
buried?
We discussed it, but no one ever told the secrets. So, maybe if I'd stayed in labor a little bit longer, I would know that. But yeah, but I mean, the more that I learned about HR, and how multifaceted it is, the more interested I became in it beyond just labor relations. I've gone on to work and gain experience in the other functions of HR, and have always kind of come back to recruiting because I think it's one of the more positive sides of HR.
It's the fun side.
It's the fun side. You're not, you're telling people welcome to this new company, and not bye bye. It's the more enjoyable function of HR for sure. But other than that, I'm a reformed pre-K dropout. I have
Shame, shame.
yeah, no, I've gone on to get some higher degrees. I'm hoping by the time I'm 75, I might have a doctorate. We'll see. Verdict is still out on that.
Doctorate
Good
But
in
luck.
what?
it's in business, not in
Oh,
HR.
that's
Yeah,
general.
I like to keep it
What
general.
kind of business, Melanie?
General, but admin, I think, is
Generally
technically the
business.
title. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I'm always trying to learn something new. My memory's not great, so I relearn a lot of things that I've relearned. I'm also a Girl Scout dropout. That's for a later episode, but I think the only thing I really retained was a love for Thin Mints. which I have carried throughout my whole life.
Put them in the
But
freezer. That's the trick. You got to put those in the freezer.
yep, yep. Um,
Thin mints are disgusting. They suck.
you said that.
Girl Scouts of the world, just disregard him, please.
Give me the tag along every day of the week.
Oh, really?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the old man cookie, right?
Yep, pretty
Who
much.
doesn't like peanut butter covered in chocolate?
Fair, but it, pales in comparison to the Thin Mint.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And my, I was a Girl Scout, so I'm like somewhat expert there. But yeah, other than that, I generally find myself in embarrassing situations, personal life, professional life. I'm beginning to think that I create the situation, instead of just find myself in it. But, I don't know. Either
50-50, yeah.
way,
50-50.
50-50, right?
50-50.
50-50. From our extensive experience, right?
From our
What, 5 years now?
5 years now, yeah, it's
It keeps me humble. It helps drive my warped sense of humor.
oh,
So I'm gonna,
humble.
yeah, somewhat humble, but yeah, anyway, so I began my professional career really just as a way to, I was looking for something, a way to get by, a way to make ends meet, who will hire me? And I feel like I'm now driven by a new purpose. It's not just making money, making ends meet, or even just finding success. It's in making an impact or trying to make an impact.
Hey, hashtag impact,
Yeah,
right?
in the work that I do. So that's my journey to HR. It's not over yet, but that's how I got to where I'm at today.
Unless you
So,
Nice.
win the lottery tomorrow, then we'll never see you again.
unless I win the lottery tomorrow, yeah, then you're gonna have to, I'll be on a remote island somewhere that I purchased.
That's okay too. That's okay.
Yeah.
Imagine at some point we'll find you and maybe interview you as you're on the beach drinking that Mai Tai, right?
Well, yeah.
And
Yep.
see how many HR violations you've made to hotel employees.
Oh God.
Look at me, boys.
Oh, we'll find that. We're gonna find the edit button. We'll edit that one.
That's episode 8. Don't worry. We'll get into that later.
Okay.
All right. Um, okay. So
Jake,
I
what
guess
you got
that,
for us?
yeah, I was gonna say, I guess that leaves me. So, much like y'all, never really set out to go down that path. As you can probably see with some of the stuff behind me, right? Went down the veteran route. So got into West Point, did the 5 years required out of there. Deployed for 15 months, and when I came home, we had our daughter, and I was like, man, I can't leave for a year at a time again. So at that point, I actually picked up the phone and called this agency, and the agency was really centered around recruiting specifically for veterans to find corporate positions. And ironically, I had said, hey, Raleigh, North Carolina is kind of a target area. It was like halfway between Texas and Ohio, which is kind of where family was for myself and my spouse. And so at that juncture, it was, hey, we're interested. I'll come out and look at it. I don't know if recruiting is what I want to do long term, but I'll at least get the exposure to a variety of different industries, right? So at that point, got the job offer, accepted it, and for the first 4 years of my civilian career, really was just helping veterans find corporate jobs. And the great thing was I got exposure to the steel industry, the oil and gas industry, tech. I mean, all the social media companies that we probably are going to post this on. Point is, we worked with those businesses and helped them find great veterans as they transitioned into corporate America. And so it at least felt natural, and it felt like I was doing something that was worthwhile. And so then time passed, and we wanted to get back to Texas, which is where my wife and her family is originally from. So found a job out here, and really, like, as I progressed through HR, cut my teeth in the recruiting side, but really started to gain exposure and experience through like projects and maybe additional assignments in other areas of HR, and kind of thought it was intriguing. And I think the biggest thing for me that has always been, I think, the most intriguing about HR is that HR can really like either build or break the business altogether. And what I mean by that is it's really a matter of, upfront hiring the right kind of individuals. Um, but then once they're on board, and Melanie, with your onboarding experience, certainly can attest to this, but like making sure that's a good experience and making sure that even beyond that, that you have this culture that is a culture where you're keeping employees engaged and allowing them to be who they are, but also enjoy the work that they do. And that's a hard thing to find in corporate America today, right? As you guys I mean, how many terrible companies have we experienced? Like
We've
one or
been
two
together
I could
for
think of.
Yeah.
we've been together for a while now, so yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, we could name some, but we won't go there, obviously. But, the point is, I think being intentional about culture and making that kind of impact on an organization. Again, another
There it
shameless
is. Good
plug for the
job.
business. Yep, I worked that in there.
No,
The whole
I did.
idea is that, yeah, you failed, right?
I did.
You had one job. Um, so just being in a position where we can influence that from an HR perspective, culturally throughout the organization, and help an organization get to that point where they treat adults like adults. And look, if you behave like a child, we'll step in and we'll help that leader get to the point where they manage you either up or out of the organization. But I think again, that's kind of one of those things that it's important to get right as a company. And so, doubling back to impact. So the whole idea with this business, as we sat down and had our initial conversations about like really this evolved from, I think, a disgruntledness with the way things are done within companies. And, specifically at that point of initial impact or point of initial contact with a candidate and future employee. So helping a business find the right people. And then beyond that, so one thing that I love about impact is that for the first 90 days, we follow that candidate. And uh, once they've completed that 90 days, we give that business a free report that's like, hey, here's the good, bad, and ugly. Here's everything that's going well. Here are the things that didn't go well. And having done that and seeing the potential benefits there, they could throw it in the trash if they want to, right? Or they can utilize it. They can even hire us if they wanted to influence the maybe um, some of the onboarding processes that need to take place, or the employee handbook changes that need to happen, or maybe even just looking at their benefits program and saying, hey, like this isn't quite working and here are some things that you can do differently there. So again, I think I never thought that I would be in a position of working in HR where you're really just influencing decisions and not making them, especially with the military background. But it's actually a lot of fun. It feels like you're almost always a consultant, right? As we've worked
Sure.
through a variety of different roles, it feels like you're always helping someone do better in terms of like bringing that employee on board or recruiting for that employee, or that employee's not doing well, so helping them through that process of like how do you coach them up or out of the organization. So that's been kind of my journey. But I think, ultimately the pinnacle being like, okay, I'm the VP of HR at a company. I can control the strategy, but like I also still don't get to make some of those ultimate decisions myself. And so like
Exactly right.
so when we were feeling that frustration and that, like I just described earlier, that disgruntledness, I think really being in a position now as Impact to, hey, look, as an organization, we can give you advice. You don't have to take it, but at least we get to make the decision to like do the right thing and tell an organization that, hey, this is broken. This one thing that you're doing is not working. So here's what we recommend to fix it. It's up to you what you do with that information. But again, I think that's it's been a lot of fun, and it's been so this is just like a portion of that journey, but this is I think this is the most fun that we get to have, right? Because
It is
we get to sit here and have a drink and talk about, all
a
the
little fun.
HR things that happen behind that closed door, or that give folks that insight into
You made
when
me
we
just
sit
think of
down in
something,
that. Go ahead, sorry.
and I'm cutting you off on purpose.
You're fine. No, I get wordy. Sorry.
You said your HR experience, and I know we don't have all day. Do you not feel like when you were overseas or doing anything, that was HR and you just didn't realize it? When you were, you know what I mean? Because you were kind of guiding and running. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and especially like I'll take that even a step further and say like even in the military police corps, so broadly, yes. I mean, we're certainly doing all those things as a leader, right? So I was a platoon leader, a company commander, all those different things. Like you're definitely in the weeds of HR all the time. But like even beyond that, as military police, like you're enforcing the rules.
Sure,
And the great thing is like there's a lot of black and white when it comes to HR and the recruiting process,
of
but
course.
there's also that gray area, and I think that gray area is really where you can make that difference as far as being that advisor to a business and helping them kind of decipher like, okay, yes, your policy says this. Maybe we should do things a little differently in this case because of these factors, right? And walking them through kind of that risk assessment and helping them understand like this is why this is the best decision. Now it's up to them to take that advice, but yeah, to your point,
Sure.
um, being in the military, that was definitely a
And there's
constant.
no way you thought that. You know what?
No,
I'm
this
really in HR as you've got
is the last thing. Yeah, bullets flying. I'm
hell
I'm in
going
HR
all
right now,
around you. Wow, I'm really in HR. This
right?
is so human resources.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not.
Even though it's different kind of bullet shots you're
Yeah.
screaming past your head, when you're onboarding or I know we're going to have several episodes and there's some stuff that I can't wait for Melanie to share, especially with her background and what she has experienced in employee relations. It's been,
The employee
it,
relations stuff. Oh,
it is going to be, I truly can't wait for this to continue. Can't wait to record the next one. um, because the stuff we have for everyone is really going to benefit in some way, and I'm excited for the future.
yeah. Melanie, pile on that one. I'm gonna jump on it last.
Yeah, no, I'm just excited to get this thing started. Everyone kind of has an idea of how we got into this field, and none of us purposely said, you know what,
Right.
I think when I grow up, I want to work in HR. But here we are, not only working in it, but talking about it,
Talking about it
podcasting about
over
it.
over a drink, right?
Right. That's the best
So,
way to talk about HR, actually.
oh my gosh. And that's, I think that's the whole idea here, right? Is that like folks get that insight behind that closed door, like at the HR happy hour that we're sitting there, like having that debrief and that drink, and it's like, man, this is what happened today, and this is can you believe what Johnny said or what Susie said, right? It's like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what happened, and you'll get that insight. So, welcome for the second time now to the HR on the Rocks podcast. Hopefully, you're enjoying this with either a jog or on a having a drink yourself. But either way, we look forward to bringing you a lot of great content, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See everyone later.